Hello everyone and welcome to the second edition of our podcast, Unlimited Pancakes. I am your host, Fernando Ramirez, aka MasterChef. And today I got two special guest stars with me today. I got Jordan Wade, editor-in-chief of Ultness.com.
Hey, how's it going?
And I have Travis Anthony, a big-time Rockets fan.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
All right, and just to get right at it, today we're going to discuss the weekly review, what's been going on recently in the NBA. And we're just going to touch on a couple of main topics, give some quick opinions and remarks on what's the happening of the NBA. Guys, first things first, big trades happened this week, and ironically everybody was focused on the trades that were going on throughout the NBA, but there was a lot of good games going on. One of the big games that happened was, the big trade that happened with the Houston Rockets acquiring Thomas Robinson, but then all of a sudden James Harden goes big time, gets a career high 46 points, 7 for 8 shooting from the 3 and 14 from 19 from the field goal. What did you guys think about that game?
I mean, obviously, that was amazing. I mean, it's something that overshadowed, was probably the biggest trade at the trade deadline. I mean, interesting enough, it was just a few small moves the Rockets made. That was, Thomas Robinson trade was probably the biggest trade and probably was big for us, obviously, they weren't being in Houston. But I would say Harden's 46-point night was probably the bigger deal, and that was amazing. And just watching the highlights is fantastic. I mean, it was. I don't want to say Jordan-esque because that's sort of like throwing around a big name, but it was pretty fantastic to watch.
Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, that was definitely the best game of Harden's career. Coming off the All-Star game, I was afraid that there was going to be a little bit of a lag because he played host to so many players, but he came out even though the team was shorthanded, carried the team. And that night, he was clearly the best player on the court. Yeah. Durant had an off game, still had a triple-double, but when it came down to the end, he was just hitting clutch shot. It didn't matter who was guarding him. He was on fire.
And Jeremy Lin didn't do too bad also, 29 points, so he contributed. That was a 1-2 punch. We got to see some of the full potential of the team, and we'll see forward how the team goes. Other things that happened in the NBA, Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut.
Yes.
I always say Bogart, and Jordan always corrects me. I don't know why. I always like to put the R in there.
He's not Humphrey Bogart.
But Bogart's been cleared to play back-to-back games, so he's going to be starting to do that after the All-Star break. I'm a little concerned given his track record of being, his health. Do you think it's a smart idea to start, giving him the back-to-back games, given that the key reason why you brought him was for the playoffs? You start to wonder, you start playing him right now, back-to-back games, is something bad going to happen? You hope not, but...
Well, it's risky, but Mark Jackson, the Warriors coach, was a pretty aggressive player and seems to be an aggressive coach. So I'm not too surprised by it. I don't know if he's still lingering with his injuries, but I know he's a big deal for that team, one of the best shot blockers in the NBA.
Definitely. As
a team, they're, I think, third worst in the league in blocked shots. So the team needs him, and I hope it works out for him health-wise.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Jackson was obviously extremely aggressive as a player, and you got to. I think it's important to play him back-to-back games because you got to know. Come playoff time, you're not playing back-to-back, but you got to know if he's going to be able to hold up over the grueling postseason and stuff like that. And you might as well just throw him in a deep end of the pool and see if he can swim. He's always been like you said, a great shot blocker, and that's a presence that the Warriors need, and that's something you really need in the postseason as well. So, might as well see if he can endure the wear and tear.
I think me personally, when I look at that Warriors team, that's the first time in a long time they've had a really legitimately, well-balanced team.
Oh, yeah.
But I always fear, I always have this yellow light when I look at their players because they always seems like, Curry seems to have his injuries all the time with his ankle injuries, and Bogut is naturally, injury-prone.
Right.
And I wish the best for this team because, they've been working hard. They've been doing collecting the pieces finally. It seems like they have a good team. You just hate to... I personally hate to see, because the Rockets, given their history with T-Mac and stuff like that,
right.
you just really hate to see, or the Trailblazers with Greg Oden, and
right. Yeah.
You hate to see teams that they're building themselves up, and it's just because of the way they manage their players, injuries, and I just hate to see that. So we'll see what happens with Andrew Bogut. Another thing that happened, the unfortunate loss of Jerry Buss to the Los Angeles Lakers organization, but Thursday night against the Celtics, they played some inspired basketball. It seemed, it was the first game in a long time since the Howard trade. They just connected. They were playing well. They were sharing the ball. What do you guys think about the loss of Jerry Buss?
Obviously, it's really sad. He's been a big part of the NBA for a long time. Since 1979, he's on the Lakers, and they've won 10 titles since
they won 10 titles around
10 titles since he won, and they went 16 times to the finals. That's quite the run. So obviously you can't replace such a great owner. Now his son's taking over the team, and we'll see where they go from here. He's Jim Buss, his son, right? Yeah, he's made some questionable calls here and there, but I don't mean to be grim in saying this or sound off. I mean, it's going to sound awful coming out, but it's kind of sad the Lakers had to have the death of their owner to play inspired basketball.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like it was an inspired game, but this is a team that it still drives home the fact this team is extremely talented, and they are the story of the season. Just that how they've just completely collapsed, and they can and the first couple months of the season, it's like, well, they're going to get it together. I mean, they never played together before. It's gradually going to come together, and it still hasn't. And so, it is sad the loss of Jerry Buss, but it just drives home the fact that this team, they're awful. But I mean, the Celtics have been dealing with injuries too, so it was a big win, but not as big as it, to me as it could have been. So,
Definitely.
Yeah, Jerry Buss is, I guess, arguably the greatest, our most successful NBA owner ever. So enough good things can't be said about him. For the Lakers, not so much. But for this particular game, it was great. Dwight Howard went into his old form. I think he had 24 and 12, something like that. Earl Clark, who's been a surprise, but he's more of a Mike D'Antoni style power forward. He's been having some good games. He had a great game. Anton Jameson was good off the bench. Steve Nash was 6 of 7 from the field. Kobe Bryant didn't shoot all that well, but I think he had 7 assists or somewhere around there, so he's continuing his role of facilitator. This team, obviously, we know can be really good, and still, whenever I look at their roster, Nash, Howard.
They're still lingering in the ninth seed. I mean, they're only 4 games behind the Rockets in seeding, so you wonder they started getting their act together. And Kobe Bryant recently promised, but promises are promises. Right. We're going to get to the playoffs. We promise our LA fans we're going to get there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Right. I mean, for the Rockets' sake, I hope they don't overtake us. But that team is dangerous. I mean, they got the talent, so we'll see what happens here down the stretch.
For sure. I think one of the players of the week has been Brandon Jennings. With all the trade talk with the Bucks, especially the Bucks have been connected to a lot of trade talks, and one of the pieces was always Brandon Jennings. And you had heard, I heard some from Brandon Jennings. He didn't want to be traded. He wanted to prove himself that he belongs part of that Bucks organization. He is a part of the movement to get them towards playoff contention. And he had a pretty impressive night. Went 34 and 31 points back-to-back games for the Bucks, and what was a good little 2-game series against the Nets. Unfortunately, went 0-2. Against them with Joe Johnson getting a crazy game winner in one of those, but come close to trade talk and all that stuff, this guy decides to light it up and play some pretty impressive games for the Bucks.
Yeah, I don't know if he was trying out for other teams or if he actually really does want to stay in Milwaukee.
Like, tryout time.
But he's obviously capable of going for 25, 30 on any given night. He's a great shooter. Not all the time. I think he's shooting around 40%, so he's kind of a chucker for a point guard.
Yeah.
But he's definitely capable of lighting it up. Him and Monte Ellis both. That team is, I don't really know where they're going. I didn't understand the Monte Ellis trade in the first place. But at least they're exciting to watch with those two guys in the backcourt.
Oh, yeah, any night those two guys are playing. I mean, somebody's going to score. But, yeah, I mean, ever since Jennings' beginning of his career, what is his rookie season? He had like 55 in a game or something like that?
Yeah, like the 5th game.
Right, and we knew from the very beginning this kid could score. Like you said, his shooting percentage is a little suspect. But I wonder how truthful he's being by saying he wants to stay in Milwaukee. I've been in Milwaukee. It's a neat town. There's not a whole lot to do there. No. I know he's trying to be loyal to the fan base and stuff like that, but I do think he was trying to probably auditioning for other teams. I mean, there was trade talks that Dallas wanted him and stuff like that. He can score. He will probably continue to score for the rest of his career, provided he has the opportunities to do so. The guy does like to score. So but yeah, it was. I don't think it wasn't too coincidental that it was during trade time. So.
But impressive games and impressive week by Brandon Jennings.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another game, it was a little bit of a Eastern Conference or I guess you could say that semifinals preview, the Knicks versus the Indiana Pacers, but not so much. Indiana Pacers demolished and embarrassed the Knicks. It seemed like one team was ready to prove themselves coming out of the All-Star break. Their team was like, give us one more day, we're still resting and stuff like that. But any early reactions from that? You think it was just a bad game by the Knicks, or you just really think that Indiana Pacers, they're coming close to that 2nd seed? You think the Pacers are starting to prove they might be at a higher class than the Knicks in terms of talent and overall? Did you take anything from that game, that beatdown?
Yeah, I did. I've never been very high on the Knicks, even though they have a great record and they have an elite player in Carmelo Anthony, and as long as you've got that, you should be good. They got Tyson Chandler, who knows what it takes to win a title. They got Jason Kidd, same thing. But all the same, I just never get too excited. They're an old team.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah, with J.R. Smith playing a significant role.
Yeah.
You never know when he's going to go 1 for 15 from the field or something insane. So I don't know if they're a playoff type team. And then Indiana is a very deep team.
And we're still waiting for Danny Granger to come back. I thought he was going to come back today, actually, on Wednesday, but it looks like they're going to still hold him out. And I mean, you don't really have to worry about. Paul George has just been phenomenal as the go-to guy.
Oh yeah.
You can hold out on Danny Granger, and just bringing him back, you'd think, that's even more firepower for the Pacers if he doesn't really, cut down on the flow of how they've been playing already without him. But it was it was impressive. I was very impressed by the Pacers, the way they defeated the Knicks, and you just have to worry, can the Pacers, take that throne from the Heat, see come playoff time.
Yeah, they can. I think they're 2-0 against them so far this year.
Yeah.
So they can, and with their big man tandem of Roy Hibbert and David West, both of those guys can score. So anytime you got low post scoring, that's a big help. The Heat,
and that's something the Heat completely lacks. So,
right,
yeah.
exactly. So and Paul George, all-star. Danny Granger, I don't know how he fits into the team anymore, to be perfectly honest, but whenever he plays, he'll contribute. He'll be a positive. So it could be a great playoff series between them and the Heat.
Yeah, and teams of the week, the number 1 seeds in each conference, the Spurs and the Heat, respectively, the 9-game win streak by the Heat and a 5-game win streak by the Spurs. And Thursday night, they both played, Heat defeating Chicago, and the Spurs' impressive win against the Clippers. So at this point, just a fun question. At this point, at this stage in the season, who would you say is the better top team, the San Antonio Spurs or the Miami Heat, Jordan?
I do want to say the Spurs just because just kind of change it up, but it has to be the Miami Heat because the Spurs do this every year, right? I mean, they're fantastic during the regular season. They do well in the postseason.
They've mastered the regular season,
right? And it's amazing that Pops can go out there and put like a lineup that doesn't include any of his big three at all, and they can still get big wins, But for me, I think it has to be the Miami Heat because as long as you have LeBron on your team, as long as you have Dwayne Wade on that team, they're going to be great despite their rebounding issues, despite big man issues. I say the Heat are probably the better of the two just by default, but I want to jump to an early conclusion and say this is going to be the Spurs' last run, but I can't say that because we've been saying this is the Spurs' last run for the last like 5-6 years, right? So I mean, the Spurs are going to do well in the playoffs. They're definitely going to win at least one series, maybe two. So they're both dangerous teams, and they both are rightfully at the top of the conference.
I can see the Spurs already going back to at least the Western Conference Finals because it just I don't see a team besides the Thunder putting up a threat to the Spurs' run.
The Spurs will be a tough out to any team. Daryl Morey in an interview said that the Spurs would probably the last team that the Rockets would want to face in the playoffs just because they're so fundamentally sound. Mm-hmm. But as to who's the better team, I would have to go with the Heat as well. LeBron, the stretch he was on going into the All-Star break, it just wasn't fair. It looked like he wasn't even trying, and he was getting
insane.
30 points a game without even trying. He's
figured it out. That's what you were afraid of, because that's usually how it is with the players that are supposedly supposed to be like legendary players.
Right.
When is the point that they're going to I figured it out. I figured out the regular season. I figured out my game. I figured out every aspect of this.
Well, they all have to have that moment when they're just like completely unconscious. Like it's like the game is so natural to them. They're playing on a different speed, a different plane than everybody else on the court.
Exactly.
And it was kind of cool to see LeBron do that just because we know LeBron's great. We know he's the best player in the world. But and it has had some backlash for me with now everybody's talking about who's better, Jordan or LeBron, and it's way too early and they're two totally different types of players. But it's cool that we can actually start legitimately having that argument because LeBron had that stretch because LeBron is finally kind of playing at an unconscious level. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were giving the MVP award to Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And then after this stretch now, well, I don't know if that was something that motivated LeBron, maybe not. Maybe that's a little too petty and he's above that. But either way, I think the MVP is his to lose, and I think the title is the Heat's to lose. I think this is their league.
I think just to answer the question, I'm going to go with the San Antonio Spurs just because I'm impressed, and we've seen it for a while now, the way that Greg Popovich manages his team, the way he just anybody from his team can just contribute and be the star of the team, and it helps them incredibly how, for example, they can just turn on the switch whenever they see, for example, I think Greg Popovich said in an interview, when they had to face the Clippers, there are certain teams okay, this is a team that I might face in the future in the playoffs, put a little bit more effort against them, but they show off and they are able to really fundamentally sound basketball. It's just, I'm always impressed and envious of the way they play basketball because it's just incredible the way he manages the team. And at this point in time, I would say, the Spurs are better than the Heat. Just for now, but we'll see come playoff time. And one last thing before we get to the main topic of the day. A little bit of teams that are kind of fluttering. The Warriors and the Blazers each respectively had 6-game losing streaks at the moment. Warriors were able to come back against the lowly Suns, got a win, so they finally cut that streak down. And the Blazers made a trade to maybe help their bench a little bit more. But out of the two teams, who do you think is going to be able to come out of their funk, moving forward, the Blazers or the Warriors?
I'm going to say the Warriors. I think the Blazers are talented. I mean, they got Aldridge. Lillard's fantastic. And that Eric Maynard trade is a nice trade. It does kind of fortify the backcourt. But as we've already kind of touched on, the Warriors have a lot of talent on that team. And provided nobody else gets hurt and provided Bogut can stay healthy and stuff like that, I think the Warriors are the ones that are going to fight out of it. And they're going to be they are a playoff team, in my opinion, and they're going to be a playoff team. Blazers, they're still up and coming. I mean, Lillard's eventually going to be the focal point of that team, I believe. And so, I mean, they're still kind of respectively young. So for me, I'd have to say the Warriors are the ones that are going to fight out of it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I hate to agree again, but I have to. I'll go with the Warriors. They just have so much more talent than the Blazers, and I think they're the 6th best team in the West. Yeah, with Bogut coming back, I think they'll be fine. They're a great shooting team, and when they have bad shooting stretches, they're going to lose. This is kind of hard to explain. The Blazers' losing streak was a little bit easier to explain. They were having some inconsistent play from their big three of Lillard, Batum, and Aldridge.
Yeah.
You know, when one was having a good night, two were having a bad night. All three of them had a great night against the Rockets, but that's when Harden went for 35 points, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, and something like 12 of 15 shooting. So
I'm just wondering, fatigue, if it's starting to play in with this team, because they almost have no bench when I look at the Portland Trail Blazers that can really come off and contribute. And, like, for example, Leonard is playing 38.5 minutes per game. The guy is just they're playing them way too much. I feel like they're playing their starters way too much, and maybe towards the end of the stretch you're going to see them going into these funks just from being exhausted, just from pure fatigue.
Yeah, they do lack a bench, and I just honestly. I don't think they have the makeup to really put together a big stretch run to get into the playoffs or whatnot. So I mean, they're still young and they're still defining who they're going to be in the long run. They do have a big three, but we don't know how long Aldridge is going to be on that team. I mean, they probably explore opportunities to trade him in the offseason because he's at that point where, I mean, he's still young, but Batum and Lillard are so much younger that you might want to build around them and maybe get a different big in there. Yeah. But yeah, I don't see them really making a big stretch to get out of this funk.
Yeah, you hear rumors of Aldridge in possible trades every once in a while. So I'm not sure exactly how that team views him, whether they want him there or not for their plans going forward.
Well, we'll see what happens there. But now to go on to the main topic, we're going to talk the NBA trade deadline.
Yes.
And for a minute there, we thought Rudy Gay, that trade was going to be the biggest trade of the year so far.
Well, I think it still is. I mean, I'm not gonna say the Thomas Robinson trade. I mean, obviously here in Houston, the Robinson trade has so much. It's got so much more weight. I'm not gonna say it overtook the Rudy Gay trade. Right. But that being said, it is sort of sad that we didn't have a bigger trade considering there were so many names being thrown around. Like, everybody thought for sure Josh Smith was going to move.
Josh Smith, Paul Millsap,
Al Jefferson,
Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard was in that.
KG,
Kevin Garnett,
Paul
Eric
Pierce.
Bledsoe.
I mean, pretty much anybody in the Celtics was, in trade talks. Even Andrew Rondo was in trade talks.
All right, well, I guess the way we're going to start it off is we're going to look at the trades that did happen.
Okay.
We're going to grade them, see how they benefited or didn't benefit certain teams. So let's go one by one. The first trade we're going to talk about is Jordan Crawford from the Washington Wizards was acquired by the Boston Celtics, and the Wizards got Leandro Barbosa and Jason Collins from the Celtics. I think this is a pretty straightforward answer. The Celtics won this trade. I mean, they got a instant offensive scorer that they can get off the bench. They trade almost nothing,
Yeah, they traded an injured Barbosa who's not going to return this year, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and Jason Collins is a guy who just always seems to find his way onto the roster. He's a big man who's just there because he's close to 7 feet tall, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't. It seems like there's been some backlash to this trade, like people not understanding why the Celtics did it. It's like, well, they needed to fortify the point guard or the combo guard area, and so for me, I don't understand how this would be a loss at all for the Celtics.
Yeah, the Celtics are just going to use Jordan Crawford to kind of replace what they had wanted Barbosa to do.
Offensive energy from him.
I think he's averaging around 13 points a game. people in Washington weren't too happy with him because of his erratic play.
Right.
But they're hoping in Boston, under the tutelage of the veterans there, blah, 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 he'll get better.
He gets disciplined.
Yeah. Washington, they just get some cap relief. They get some expiring contracts. They have a lot of big deals over there.
I don't see anything wrong with this trade. I see it as a win. I don't say a win-win, but a win for the Boston Celtics. They get instant offense off the bench, and they needed to do something because I think with this trade, they have a spot. They have a spot in the playoffs in that weak East, so they've solidified themselves that.
And the Wizards are not going to. I mean, having Jordan Crawford this year or going forward is not going to make them.
And he wasn't even that happy down there, though, because the future is Wall and Beal supposedly.
Right. So you might as well get rid of him before he becomes a cancer in the locker room and get some cap relief, because cap relief is always good. So
yeah. So quick grade for the Celtics. I give him a B. Just random letter grade. Give him a B for that trade.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any other way. I mean, it's not an A move because he's not a fantastic player or anything like that. But yeah, I would say a solid B, and I would say probably a C plus for the Wizards. So.
I'll go B plus for the Celtics because I think he could potentially be a great fit for them this year.
Yeah.
For the Wizards, getting cap relief, that's always good. So we'll go B with that as well.
Okay.
All right, and that's that trade. All right, next trade to discuss, Eric Minor to the Blazers.
I'd say it's good for the Blazers. They needed a backup point guard. Nolan Smith isn't really a point guard. He's a shooting guard with a point guard's body.
Right.
Eric Maynor hasn't been the same since his ACL injury, but he's still young. He's 6'3".
Good size.
Yeah, good size. He could be a good player. And considering, what did they give up?
They gave up just some money. They had a $2.3 million trade exception from the sign and trade of Raymond Felton.
Right.
Yeah, and the rights to some Greek player who will never
see the light of the NBA.
Yeah, it was a good move for the Blazers.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Minor had fallen off the rotation with the rise of Reggie Jackson, down in Oklahoma City, so he was just kind of sitting on the bench, and you bring him over there to, kind of take some minutes off of Leonard, so that actually is a huge benefit to them because Leonard's just been playing, like I said, playing way too many minutes, so
yeah, this
could be a good move for the Blazers. They lost nothing, it seems pretty good.
Right. I mean, and like you said, it opens up more minutes for Reggie Jackson. There's really no point. I mean, if the Thunder don't need 3 point guards, and there's no point in carrying 3 point guards. And like Maynard's been hurt before, and he has kind of struggled to come back. I'm interested that the rumors were that he was going to go back to Utah, which I would have found funny because Utah kind of shipped him off to Oklahoma City for basically nothing in his rookie year, and then he ended up being pretty solid for the Thunder for a bit. But he ended up going to a different team in the division. So, but yeah, that would have been interesting to me. But.
Yeah. And the supposed, the second biggest trade that happened was J.J. Redick to the Bucks. And to read exactly what was traded, it was J.J. Redick, Gustavo Anyan, and Ish Smith to the Bucks. And the Magic received Beno Udrih, Doran Lamb, and Tobias Harris from the Bucks. So, what do you guys think of that trade?
I feel like this trade was built up bigger than it actually was. It seemed like the media just wanted to have a big trade, and they kept talking up Redick and stuff like that. And Redick is a great shooter. I'm not gonna knock his talent, but Gustavo Ion and who else was it that they shipped off?
Ish Smith.
Ish Smith. Yeah, former Rocket Ish Smith.
Right.
Yeah, that name, though.
Yeah, it's sort of inconsequential. I mean, the Bucks, it helps them for a playoff run, but what are the Bucks going to do in the playoffs? I mean, it just kind of crowds the guard position even more.
Yeah, wonder how you're going to distribute those minutes between Ellis and Jennings.
Well, even more than that, it's like if Redick gets on the floor, I mean, is he ever going to see the ball? Like he'll be open for a 3-pointer, but is Jennings or Ellis going to kick it out to him? I mean, I don't really see how it helps either team. I mean, it obviously helps the Magic because they get something for nothing in a year when they're
rebuilding from the
they're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the word is that they might go sign Redick again in the offseason. So if you trade him for stuff and then you sign him back, then it's an ultimate win for the Magic. But Redick's he's a role player. He gets he'll get some serious minutes, but he's a shooter. I mean, I don't know. Doesn't make the Bucks a contender.
No, the Magic wouldn't have been. I don't think they would have been able to re-sign Redick after this year. His agent said they're going to ask for $10 million a year to start out.
Oh, whoa!
So the Magic, they had no interest in that. So I think this was just trading him for the sake of getting something.
Yeah.
I don't really know if they even got something. They got Beno Udrih, Doran Lamb, and Tobias Harris. Lamb and Harris weren't in the rotation at all.
No.
And Udrih
supposedly Harris is like sort of a little prospect that maybe you could get a couple minutes, maybe you could get something from him.
They could be good, but this was just making a trade for the sake of making a trade for the Magic.
And it's not hurting them because the Magic are not going anywhere this year. So and Udrih is just a expiring contract. So I mean it's just capital.
This was definitely an overhyped trade given the disappointing trade deadline. And, you just had to grab okay, what can we get? What can we say was the biggest thing to happen? But the truth is, Redick on paper with the Bucks, it doesn't hinder them. It doesn't really benefit them. I still see the Bucks hovering in that 8th seed, Well,
if Redick would have went to the Bulls or something like that, a team that maybe needs some.
See, I thought they were going to do something like that.
Right, a team that needs shooting. That's okay. Well, this is sort of a bigger deal because the Bulls are actually going to the playoffs, but going to the Bucks, it's it doesn't make them any better. So to me, it was a non-factor. It was a trade for the sake of being a trade.
Yeah, the trade for a trade, and one of the bigger trades that happened, a surprise trade, another smart move by Daryl Morey was break down the trade. Thomas Robinson was traded to the Rockets. Patrick Patterson, Aldridge, and Douglas was sent to the Kings. And Marcus Morris was sent to the Suns for a second-round pick.
And we also picked up Francisco Garcia.
Oh, yeah, picked up Francisco Garcia and Tyler Honeycutt.
We can't forget about that. No. That was really attractive and very sexy to be done.
That's a good name right there, Honeycutt.
Honeycutt,
You can't lose with a man named Honeycutt.
No. Yeah, even though he's 6'8" and 170 pounds soaking wet.
Going straight to the D-League.
So, Jordan, let me start with you. What was your reaction? What do you think of this trade?
Well, actually, I actually wasn't really paying attention. I mean, I've been kind of keeping up a trade deadline, but I kept looking for big names like Josh Smith to be moved or, Al Jefferson or something like that. And actually, Travis texted me saying, nice. That's all he said. I was joking around. And so I didn't know what he was referencing. He said, no, we got Thomas Robinson. And I was kind of stunned. I'm like, well, we gave up. And then I read what we gave up. And I can't help but be happy about this trade because I know, I really liked Marcus Morris. I thought Marcus Morris was sort of coming into his own this year, especially after such a disappointing rookie season where he was a non-factor. He's getting outplayed by a guy we got in the second round, Chandler Parsons, who is great. But still, Marcus Morris was a bust. He had bust written all over him. I've loved Pat Squatch. I've loved him for a long time. But Pat Squatch
can't rebound.
He can't rebound. He's a big, small forward is what he is. And he's good, but he's never going to be a consistent starter. So we trade those two guys. Aldridge, we weren't going to resign. I'm going to miss Douglas.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Douglas. He was a good spark coming off the bench. He had his moments where he was playing better than Jeremy Lin at times.
Right. Douglas was a solid shooter this year. But regardless, none of these pieces were long-term, and we get a 21-year-old power forward who was drafted in the top 5 in this past draft. I can't see this as any other way than a win for the Rockets. We got also a second-round pick from the Suns, which is it's going to be an amazing pick in the second round. And Morey does magic in the second round. So this is a win-win for the Rockets. We clear up more minutes for guys like Terrence Jones and Donatis. So the Rockets did fantastic on this.
Yeah, I agree. Patterson wasn't long for the Rockets. I don't like to see him go, especially since he learned to hit the 3 this year. His mid-range game has been impressive. I like how he went down to the D-League, improved on his game like the Rockets wanted him to, earned a spot in the rotation, then earned the starting spot. I really liked him, but he has a year and a half left on a contract. He'll probably command $8-9 million as a restricted free agent, and the Rockets weren't going to match that anyways.
Yeah.
So shipping him off was understandable. Marcus Morris, pretty disappointed in how he ended up for the Rockets. When he was drafted, I thought, he had the potential to be a very, very poor man's Carmelo Anthony, a homeless man's Carmelo Anthony.
Well, you would beg to say he is Carmelo Anthony.
Right. And I thought, okay, well, whenever he's matched up against opposing power forwards, he'll be able to take him on the dribble. And whenever he's matched up against opposing small forwards, he can post him up. It'll work out so well. But it turns out all he could really do was just spot up for 3.
Right.
And you can find guys who could do that just about anywhere. So on the one hand, it's kind of bad we give up a 14th overall pick for a second-round pick, but cut your losses where you can. And what's more valuable than Marcus Morris is the cap space that we're going to get from that trade.
Yeah, now we have, $20 million going into next offseason?
Yeah, so that's not an insignificant amount, what we gained. Losing Douglas will hurt.
Yeah.
I don't trust Patrick Beverley with the backup point guard duties. I think Morey looked for somebody, but there was just no point guards available for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
Beverley's a little bit too erratic. But we'll see. You can have Harden handle the ball, and sometimes
it's definitely a good future move because obviously for this season, you lose rotational players like Patterson and Douglas, but I think you got people like Montañez who are going to step up, and obviously we're going to have to see how Robinson plays. But I like this trade too, and everybody in our roster is under 26 years old, especially if.
We got Delfino at 30, and Francisco Garcia is 32. But
the main pieces that we're going to
I'm sorry. In our starting lineup, our starting lineup, everybody's under 26. As far as I thought you meant the whole whole team. Full team, we got a couple guys
Yeah,
over
we got a
30,
couple guys.
but yeah, our whole starting lineup's under the age of 20 or 26 and under. So yeah, I mean that's a young team. It's a good core.
This trade, Thomas Robinson is a guy for the future. I don't know if he'll play much this year, but in college I was a big fan of his. You know, he backed up Marcus Morris and Markieff Morris at Kansas. Of course, their games were much more suited for college than the pros, so that shouldn't be too concerning. When he did get a chance to play his junior year, you know, he stepped it up. He went to a whole nother level. Big 12 Player of the Year, AP First Team All-American, ESPN.com Player of the Year. I don't know if that means anything. That's something. Yeah. You know, he averaged about 18 and 12. Shockingly, he's a poor shot blocker. I thought, with his athletic, you know, he's 6'9", 244, you know, built like a mountain, and he's got a 35-inch vertical, so you'd think he'd have some block shots, good wingspan.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, he's a project player, but he can. I think if he got 30 minutes a game, he'd already be averaging a double-double in the league. That's how good he is, just based on raw ability alone.
We're gonna have to see if we play him. And on the other end of this, I'm just I feel bad for Sacramento because, you know, I'm not a big fan of the team, but I respect, you know, the history that comes with the Kings, especially those early 2000 teams with Divac and you know, coached by Rick Adelman. And you just start to see some of the things like, you know, looking at it on their side, they traded away a top 5 pick from the draft in just half a season. You know, they got players like Patterson, assuming like, okay, and Patterson and Cousins, they played in the same college, and Cousins is a bit of a bonehead. Well, maybe Patterson is a guy that he respects, and, you know, maybe he can keep him a little bit disciplined. But you question, like, what's Sacramento doing?
Well, that was the only positive. That was the only silver lining I was willing to give this trade. You and I, you know, Fernando, you and I had actually talked about that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's the way they're selling it.
That's the way they're saying it. They're saying like Patterson is going to be somebody that's going to keep them on.
He's going to be the big brother to Boogie Cousins. You know, I love that nickname, Boogie Cousins, because like I think it takes a kick. Booby Gibson. Thank you. We're not Friday Night Lights here, but Booby Gibson. You know, that was a great name. But Boogie Cousins is the best nickname. Period. But yeah. I don't know. It is nothing more than the Maloofs trying to save some money on a team they're already going to sell and make tons of money off of. It's sad and pathetic for Sacramento, and I think it's worse that city's going to lose that team too. Because I think the writing's on the wall. They're going to move to Seattle, but yeah, it's a very disappointing year for that Sacramento Kings organization.
Yeah, it seems to be clearly a move just to line the Maloofs' pockets a little bit more before they go out the door. I think they're about to sell the franchise for $431 million, but for some reason they wanted that extra $1 million that they got in cash.
It makes a huge
Rockets.
difference.
Apparently. Yeah, I checked the internet forum for the Kings after this, and some of the fans were just certain that Stern was going to step in and block the trade because this is just ridiculous. There's no way they can let it go through. That's how lopsided the trade was.
Yeah. Well, and the final trade to grade is a very important trade that went down. Dexter Pittman of the Miami Heat got traded to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Woo!
Huge piece of the Miami Heat's championship roster has been, you know, given away to Memphis. What do you guys think of that trade?
I think the Heat are going to miss Dexter Pittman. You know, when you have a guy who's listed at 6'11", about 300 pounds, which really he's probably about, you know, closer to 6'10 and a half, probably about, you know, 320, you know, if not more. You're going to miss that. You know, he probably saw the court a whole maybe half a minute on average, probably, you know. So, yeah, that's a big man. You don't want being angry at you. I mean, he could just kind of, you know, sit on you, so, you know.
But he's got to catch you first, and I don't know if he'll be able to catch anyone.
Oh, true. I think Shaq could outrun him, too, you know.
Yeah, even nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I mean, the Grizzlies actually want Pittman? And what is the whole point of this?
Just their third-string center to replace Hamad Haddadi. They needed another big guy
to clog in the paint, you know, because that's what he was there for, you know.
He will clog the paint. I mean, he does do that well, yes.
So that was another big trade that went down. But let's discuss the trades that didn't go down. We thought, it was being speculated that a lot of these major names that we just discussed, Josh Smith being the biggest one, Paul Millsap, Al Jefferson, Dwight Howard, Eric Bledsoe, Kevin Garnett. These are big names that, you know, there was trade rumors, Bledsoe's going to be traded to Utah. And then you start thinking, well, Utah could use a point guard. You get rid of that front court that you just have way too many players on your roster. You can't pay them all. And a lot of moves that supposedly went down didn't go down. What do you guys think about, what happened? Why didn't these major trades go down that were speculated throughout the week?
It was sort of weird, this trade deadline, to kind of see but maybe we're overestimating the trade deadline in general. I mean, how many big names actually really, it seems like bigger names get traded well before the trade deadline because I think teams kind of know where they're going. But I thought for sure like someone like Josh Smith would get traded because I thought
like it was logical for certain moves to happen, like especially like the big one Utah. I thought Utah was going to make something happen.
You have to move one of those guys because you got 4 big men there right now, 2 guys who are really young. You shipped off Darren Williams for Derek Favors, and he's not getting a lot of playing time because he's got 2 guys in front of him. So you want to see if he's worth investment. Also, you drafted Enes Kanter, so it's like you want to see if these guys are guys you can build around long term. I mean, obviously, Millsap and Jefferson, both of them are not old, but their contracts are going to be up. Jefferson's been around a long time. You kind of know what you have in him. I don't think Jefferson's going to get much better. Millsap's not going to get much better. They are what they are. You might as well trade. You might as well go out and get something. I'm wondering if the Jazz were really trying to work that trade for Eric Bledsoe, and at the end of the day, it's the Clippers are like, Bledsoe is a promising young point guard. For some reason, we don't re-sign Chris Paul. At least we have him as a backup plan, and maybe also that you couldn't trade Bledsoe straight up for Millsap. You had to trade something else money wise, I think. So
yeah, I think so.
So it's like you're gonna have to get rid of either Caron Butler or DeAndre Jordan. Why would you trade DeAndre Jordan for Millsap for 1 year? You're losing a lot of height, and that's a starting center you'd be trading. So I don't know. The one that boggles my mind most is Josh Smith. I mean, why won't you get something for when you're obviously gonna lose the guy? But
yeah, I'm the same. I don't know what Utah is thinking. Apparently, they just didn't get any good offers, and they didn't want to do what the Magic did and just give up J.J. Redick for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, he's wondering. Everybody was holding the panic button. No one did anything.
Right.
But you got 2 teams that you felt that with the way the cap space is going to be managed in the future, how can you sign all these players? Why keep them? Or you're going to try to do something with them, or you can't do something with them?
Well, Daryl Morey said that in his 11 years, this was the least active trade deadline that he's ever seen.
Yeah.
So it could be the CBA, and could be that things just didn't line up right. I'm not sure.
Well, it's like, for me with the Atlanta Hawks, with Josh Smith, it's one of those things where I'm sure deep down, they don't want to give up Josh Smith for not. Obviously, we said they don't want to trade him for the sake of just trading him because the hope is that you can re-sign him. And, Danny Ferry, their general manager, he hopes, the thought is that he definitely wants to re-sign Josh Smith, but he didn't want to sign him for max. And that's obviously going to be an issue because Josh Smith believes he's a max player, though I think all of us here agree that Josh Smith isn't a max player.
He actually came out right before the trade deadline, whenever it was becoming more apparent that he wasn't going to be traded. He came out and said, "Hey, I never said that. I never said I'm a max player." That was like his agent or something. So I think that was him kind of panicking, saying, "Hey, somebody please trade for me.
I want out of Atlanta." But yeah, I don't know. But again, the most mind-boggling is the fact that Utah didn't do anything. The Lakers, they're obviously committed to Dwight Howard. Part of me was thinking that maybe that was just...
That was hyped by ESPN. They're going to make a trade. They're going to pull the trade. There's going to be
trading. Right. But I thought maybe deep down Mitch Kupchak was like, this is not going to work out long term. But then again, you can't trade Dwight Howard in the same year that you traded for him because that looks awful. You already fired a coach at the beginning of the year, hired a new coach who's not the right man for the job. You can't go out and trade the superstar that you said is the focal point of your future.
That's true.
And you just can't do all that. So Mitch Kupchak had he had to hold on to Dwight Howard and hope to goodness that he stays with the team. So, but yeah, maybe that's the reason why it's just a perfect storm of just allowing nothing to happen. So
I think it's safe to say the best trade happened 4 months ago at the beginning of the year. We wanted to trade Graves, James Harden coming down to the Houston Rockets, and just want to bring this question. After seeing that trade go down, we're watching James Harden blossom into a superstar. Is it safe to say he is a legitimate superstar in this league? He's going to have longevity. He's going to be playing at at that same level of intensity. Like he was worth the contract that we gave him.
I think since we're past midway point this season, he's still doing it. I think it's safe to say. I mean, granted, guys go through the ebb and flows. Obviously you have rough patches and stuff like that, but there's no doubt the Rockets, I mean, we gave up what it looked like a lot initially, but I think there's no doubt the Rockets got the better end of that deal. We traded 2 first-round picks in this coming draft, and everybody knows this is going to be the weakest draft in recent memory, and that's even with some weak drafts before this. So, we traded Kevin Martin. Kevin Martin didn't want to be here. His last year of his contract. We traded Jeremy Lamb. Jeremy Lamb was not going to be any sort of James Harden. I mean, he didn't project to be James Harden. So there's no way we lost this trade. And in the end, we get a guy who could be the best shooting guard the next couple of years. I mean, with Kobe declining, with Dwayne Wade declining, James Harden is going to be more than likely the best shooting guard in the NBA. So, from what I've seen so far, the test pool that we have, I think he's a legitimate superstar. I'm going to go ahead and say he's a legitimate superstar.
Yeah, I would definitely say he's a superstar. We definitely won that trade, but only because every time you trade a superstar, you lose. Unless you trade him for another superstar.
Right. Yeah.
But, what he's been able to do for the Rockets, I don't know. I don't know if there's been a situation like this before where we get a 23-year-old who's already at MVP level. You know, he has no injury problems, no conduct problems. Like, I don't know if a trade like that has ever happened before. And it's sometimes whenever I watch him and he goes off for 30-something or 40, I just have to pinch myself. Like,
it baffles me. Like, this guy
That's the reason why I just said I'm sorry, because I laugh every time I think that we got a 23-year-old. I mean, I sit there and have to pinch. I go through that every day where I'm sitting there thinking, I have this fear, and it's an irrational fear, but I fear that every day the Thunder are going to say, no, we messed up on that, bring him back. That's completely
Mulligan.
wrong. Yeah, and it won't happen, but that fear is every day because we actually, this is something, and I know we're biased because we all live in Houston, but this is something we've been waiting for the past few years. You know, Daryl Morey's been getting all these assets, like, just hold off, we're going to get somebody. First it was Melo, we didn't get Melo. Then it was Dwight, we didn't get Dwight, you know? And it's like...
There was Bosch, too.
There was Bosch, you know? And then we almost had Pau Gasol and Nene.
Thank God we didn't get Pau Gasol.
I know. To think that we, you know, and Daryl Morey, actually, I heard him on the radio the other day, you know, he said we could have had Pau Gasol and still gotten James Harden. I think it would have been a lot trickier to do that.
Yeah, I know.
But what would have worried him is that we would have signed, he said we would have signed Nene, well, he didn't say it, but he said, obviously, it was known that we were going to have Nene with Pau Gasol as a duo, you know? And then we wouldn't have been able to get Harden because we wouldn't have had the cap space. So it was just a perfect storm that happened. I was ready. I was like, I know you know for sure. I was wanting to call. I wasn't calling for Morey's head, but I was getting pretty darn close. I'm like, we have all these assets and nothing to do with, you know, nothing we can do with them. And then he pulls off this miraculous trade. And yeah, I mean, I'm just completely lost at where I'm at right now.
When you think about this trade, because it shouldn't have happened. You know, we should be right now saying, oh, well, the Thunder have James Harden on their roster, and, you know, they're playing for the top seed with Harden coming off the bench doing the same stuff they did last year, and all of a sudden, nope, he's on the Houston Rockets, and Kevin Martin's over there with the Thunder.
Right, and the new cap, it sucks for every team. I'm going to say that because I mean, it obviously restricts on what guys you can have, but it was a Rockets benefit this time around because, you know, Harden knew that he was a max player. And he didn't want to take less than market value. Some people might say that's selfish, but if you actually have the talent to do so, then you should be able to go out and get that money that you rightfully earn. And so they have Serge Ibaka, they have Kevin Durant, they have Russell Westbrook locked up. There's no way they can lock up 4 guys. It's just that would be impossible, and I would almost argue be unfair. But that's me being biased because we ended up getting James Harden in the end. So
I really thought Oklahoma City was going to keep him at least for one more year.
That was the thing. You know, keep him for 1 year because you have this core intact where you can go for another run at it and then see what happens from there. But then they pulled the trigger.
Did he have one more? Did he have a restricted? Did he have a? Was this going to be his 4th year of his contract this year?
Yeah.
And so they had the option. They could sign him to a 1-year extension, right?
Yeah, but I thought they were going to extend him and then play him 1 more year in that extension because then the tax wouldn't have become, at least in my opinion, and of course I don't have any money on the line, but it wouldn't have been too burdensome until a couple years down the road. So I thought, you know, you have a championship caliber team, you can't give up on it.
Well, especially if you know they're making money, you know that they're selling jerseys and stuff like that. I mean, I went to and at the end of the summer I went to see the Rockets play the Thunder here in Houston, and like, you know, I would say probably 60. Well, that's a bit much. I'm not going to say 60%. Maybe it was just me angry at the many Thunder fans there. I'd say it was a good 40% of the crowd was Thunder fans, though. So you know they got fans everywhere, and you know they're making money, so you think that a luxury tax hit wouldn't hurt them quite as much. But they are a small market, and I don't know. It just worked out to the Rockets' benefit, and it's amazing that it happened, and now it's just a snowball rolling downhill of good stuff. So, you know, everything's working out. So
yeah, to look at where we were 9 months ago and then where the Rockets are now, it's just, I mean, who could have predicted it? I was always been kind of a Morey fanboy, if there can be such a thing.
I will be witness to that. You're a Morey fanboy.
I was starting to get a little skeptical, and then when this Harden trade happened,
you called me up.
I was on the phone with you, and I said I think the Rockets just got James Harden. Like, I don't know if that's real, if I'm asleep, if I'm dreaming, but it's on the bottom line on ESPN. I'm scared. I don't know what's happening.
Right. Now, a Mike Ronan fan of Ultness bore witness to me. I was freaking out. I was yelling all sorts of expletives. I was losing my mind over what had just happened because I couldn't believe it was going down.
I was hanging out with a bunch of my friends too, and this guy comes in and said, "We have James Harden." We're all like, "Bullshit! You are lying. You are a liar. Stop lying!" And then we just look at it and we're like, "What?" It's just incredible. We cannot believe. I mean, at first we were like, "Okay, we gave up Kevin Martin, all this stuff." So we're like, "Okay, time out. We gave up a lot of stuff," but now it's like, "Oh no, we didn't give up that much at all."
But when you break it down, it's like none of this is going to mean anything in the long run that we gave up for him. And I'm going to say that the year the Rockets are having is very similar, if you want to make an NFL analogy, to what I think the Colts did this past year. You know, the Colts completely reinvented themselves in one offseason and made the playoffs and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see where we're going with this. We still need to make a couple more moves, but regardless, we got a good foundation. So, yeah.
It's very exciting.
Best trade of the year.
Best trade of the year so far.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to close this episode of Unlimited Pancakes. I want to thank you guys for being on this episode. Jordan, I'm definitely going to miss you when you go down to LA. I think we already said our hellos and goodbyes in the That's Alt program.
Right.
But we're definitely going to find ways to get you back on the show, you know, do Skype, whatever.
I would be more than happy to.
Virtual heads, get you over here floating.
There we go. Yeah, floating head is always a good thing.
It's
a good
definitely,
option.
we're going to find a way to get you in. And Travis, it was wonderful having you on the show. Hopefully, you know, if you're always welcome to come back if you want to, you know, just discuss NBA, anything you want to discuss. But we're going to close it. Any last statements you guys want to say?
I love James Harden.
Would you live in his beard if you could? Have a nice little hole in there?
I would happily live in his beard. In fact, you can't see it, but Travis is wearing the Nike shirt 3 the Harden way with the giant James Harden beard. My mom is getting me that for Easter, so that shirt's amazing. I want everything James Harden right now. I love the man.
Yeah, ditto that. And also, yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on.
No, of course. All right. Well, we'll be closing, and thank you for listening. Have a good night.